Who
So
is your favorite player of all time, if you can pick one?
it's very hard to pick one. Again, I have to sort of break it out in sort of a. Again, the question is, for what particular aspect are we talking about?
Right.
So, like I said, if I really want to be honest, and want to say, what do I want to achieve as a guitarist, as a musician, as a producer? I want to achieve what Jimmy Page achieved.
Right.
I want to write the songs myself. I want them to be great songs. I want to play them myself. I want to produce them in the studio myself, you know, and have total creative control over everything. And I don't think anybody's songs are better than theirs. I think there are other bands that I love equally, but I don't think anyone's songs were better. I don't think anyone's compositions were better. I think most of his choices were marvelous. I think his lead playing was marvelous, even when it was sloppy. So like I said, I go back to Jimmy Page, I go back to Tony Iommi, I go back to Richie Blackmore for a lot of the foundation of the style of music I enjoy most and what I like to play most. And that's compositionally. But if I want to talk about lead style, particular lead style, just lead style, the guys I've always had at the top of my mountain are Gary Moore and Michael Schenker. And neither of them are the songwriters that Page is, that Iommi is, that Blackmore is. Their lead style is the most exciting to me.
Right.
So that aspect of their playing is where I sort of that's what I pursued in my own style. That sort of style of having, a lot of melodicism, a lot of balls, work on my vibrato to make sure that that's tasty as hell. And, those kinds of things were those are the things I learned from those guys. I learned different things from different guys. And, there's a lot of people out there who I've stolen this from that one. I've stolen that from that one. I like this Jimi Hendrix voicing of this chord. I like that Jake E. Lee voicing of that chord. You sort of assimilate the best of what it is that it turns you on, and it becomes your own style because of the way you mix it together.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's you mentioned Jimmy Page, and I think I still haven't met anyone who likes rock music who doesn't just default back to Led Zeppelin as an example. Like, hey man, that's where it all really
I mean,
started.
it's my wife has often said, I don't trust anyone who doesn't like the Beatles. And I feel, and we both, and we
my
kind
wife
of
would
both
actually
feel
agree
that.
with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, how can you not like the Beatles? What planet are you living on? It's like, and it's to a degree that's also true of Led Zeppelin. And it's like, how can you not like this if you appreciate anything? And I know, and I have friends I know who are not huge Zeppelin fans, but
It's difficult to get
it's
into. It's not that accessible, I
I
think.
thought it was pretty accessible. I mean,
Well, I mean,
the thing I've often heard, and it was also, by the way, it was true of Rush as well. Sometimes the singer turns you off.
yeah,
Okay, it was certainly true of Rush in a lot of respects, but it was also true. People did in the early days. They weren't expecting Robert Plant's voice. They
yeah.
weren't expecting anything like that. And I think there are people who just don't respond to that.
Or they're
And
scared of it, maybe, which is valid.
maybe, or they find it great, or whatever it is. And then there were the people who said, "Oh, Jimmy Page, he's sloppy," and then blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, that's not the point. It's not about everything. Doesn't have to be clean and pristine all the time. There's a lot of this. It's about attitude. It's about mood. It's about ideas, and it's about more than that. Constructing complex arrangements and tracking multiple guitar parts to create a canvas that is much more deep. And like I said earlier, if you just if you Google what Paul Gilbert has said about Jimmy Page, you'll be astounded. It's like everybody of that era, they sort of revere him, as did I, and you know, remarkable achievements in so many areas of like not just guitar work, but also in composition, in production. He was a very early pioneer. Drums didn't sound like drums before Jimmy Page.
Yeah, he put a drum kit in an empty building, I think, in a bathroom.
He knew how he was blessed with a drummer like Bonham, but he also knew how from his session days to record drums so that it didn't sound like cardboard boxes anymore. If you compare the drum sounds on Led Zeppelin 1 to every other album, you can go back, it's like Zeppelin 1 I think came out in 68. If you go and search Wikipedia for albums of 1968 and you look at the other albums from bands that were supposedly heavy bands at that time.
Yeah.
And you look at studio albums, not live albums, but studio albums. Find me a drum sound that's anything like what's on Zeppelin 1.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to do it. And that's Jimmy. And, you know, all of these pioneering sort of practices that he pioneered in the studio, certainly he was the one who made them famous, whether or not, you know, because he probably learned them from other people from earlier sessions and things like that. But he knew how to do it, and he knew how to get it, and then he was blessed with this band of absolute gods in his band.
And John Bonham, he was also just incredible.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, you know, but you know, the point is, I think, you know, he doesn't get enough credit as a producer, and he's one of the best producers of all time for rock, certainly. All of that stuff you hear on A Whole Lot of Love, all that backwards echo, all of that stuff. The phase shifter, putting the phase shifter on the drums, things like that on, you know, on certain drum fills in Kashmir, you're hearing phase shifter on the drums. You know, those are techniques that, you know, I don't think they came from anyone but him.
And all that psychedelic break and A Whole Lot of Love, that's also really something. I mean,
right. The minute you're wearing headphones and you're listening to that, and by the way, I was doing that when I was 16 years old, and you know, listening to that, just going, oh my God. And, you know, the sonic architecture, the idea of layering guitars on top of guitars, you know, you have songs that have, you know, an acoustic bedding that you don't even necessarily think about. So you have a song like Over the Hills and Far Away that's got a 6-string acoustic, it's got a 12-string acoustic, and it's got electric, and you're painting with this canvas. And it, you know, to make sure that this, as the song progresses, it continually gets bigger and more anthemic and more dramatic and more dynamic. And, you know, a lot of that sort of innovation for the style of rock that they pioneered, it came right out of Jimmy's head. You know, all of those guys became templates for everything that came later. This is what a rock singer should look and sound like. This is what a guitar player should be looking like on stage in a rock band. You should have a Les Paul slung around your knees. You know, it's like, it was a template, and this is what your drummer should sound like. And your bass player should be able to do freaking everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah,
and
that guy was,
you know,
also something, man. They
were all such serious badasses.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
how many instruments did he play?
He was one of those guys, he was kind of like Brian Jones in the Stones, that anything you handed him, he could probably play. He plays the recorder part on Stairway to Heaven in the intro. He plays the recorder. He plays the mellotron. He plays, you know, any keyboard instrument you can manage. But then he also, you know, there's videos of him on YouTube, like going on, you know, TV shows and doing like Zeppelin songs on mandolin and stuff. And, you know, obviously any stringed instrument as well. So, you know, you have, you know, a guy who's the utility man. Anything you needed to throw at him, he'd play it. And, you know, they do a 3-hour show, and an hour in the middle of it would be a pure acoustic set. And
man, if I had a time machine,
yeah.
You ever saw him live? It's Zeppelin.
I was not able. I had tickets for the tour that they were doing when Bonham died.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I never got to see them myself live. I know people who did, And fortunately, now we have some really strong video footage. And it's funny. The other thing that I see these days is there's a lot of people on YouTube doing young people, younger than yourself, I think, doing reaction videos to rock
Yes.
music,
Yeah.
and that's wonderful because it's coming full circle. To a
Or hip
whole
hop fans who listen to Led Zeppelin for the first time.
Yeah, there's a
Zeppelin.
whole bunch of people whose minds now, these young people, are discovering Zeppelin and Queen and Purple and
Pink
all of
Floyd.
these bands, Pink Floyd to a degree, Rush. They're all madly in love with Rush. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful thing that's happening because when young people start getting back into this music and realizing, oh my God, the stuff that they're feeding me now in the industry is horrible compared to this.
Yeah, I don't know if
You know,
it's just me or if it's like a typical thing but that starts coming up when you get older. I mean, I'm in my early 30s, so I guess I'm not super young
yeah,
anymore. But is it just me or is just music just getting worse and worse? I mean,
it's not just you. It's not just you. First of all, you can make a case that every decade from the 60s on gets less and less melodic.
right,
The 60s were more melodic than the 70s. The 70s were more melodic than the 80s. By the time you get to the 80s and certainly into the 90s, you start getting rap and hip hop way much less melodic.
rap metal and Limp Bizkit
Right.
and yeah,
All of that stuff is less melodic than what came before it. And then you start getting into this stuff where now, like all of, most of the music you hear these days, if you get in an Uber and an Uber driver, I think by law they're required to play this garbage for you while you're in the car. But everything seems like it's made by the same three or four people.
yeah,
All of the backing tracks, all of the backing tracks have the same drum machines, the same production effects, the same exact sonics,
it's
and
all
then
auto
they change.
tuned.
Yeah, and they find different little infantilized women voices. So they all have these little girl voices. They all sound like they're 14-year-old jailbait on purpose. They can hold a tune, but they don't sing like with power or anything
Right.
like that. They don't. I mean, they don't have the big voice like perhaps a Christina Aguilera or something like that.
She could
Who
actually sing.
she has real freaking pipes.
Yeah,
But most people that you hear say, yeah, they're just kind of like whining, and they sound like little pouty little girls, and
or it's
um,
gangster rap, or like angry,
right, but
angry shit,
yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff is industry created stuff where there's like two or three songwriters who write all of this material for these people, and they just crank it out like a factory. And the people who are doing these reaction videos, they're getting their minds blown when they see Freddie Mercury. I mean, they're getting their minds blown when they hear Led Zeppelin. They're getting their minds blown when they see Rush play live, and see them do what they do, and they realize, oh my God, what am I hearing in my own era at this time that is even remotely close to that kind of handcrafted music? And the answer is zero, nothing. So, it's a really cool thing to watch a bunch of 20 somethings sit there and listen to a Thin Lizzy song and go, wow. or a Zeppelin song and go, oh my God. And, it's funny. I was watching one the other night where it was this female reacting to Led Zeppelin, and she was watching Black Dog live from Madison Square Garden, 73, watching Robert Plant slither across the stage. And you could see, it's like, this woman is getting hot just watching this. Still, for over 50 years, they're still getting women hot. They're still, and then she watched another one, and she got this look on her face like, oh my God, I've missed all of it.
right.
I've missed all of it. I can't believe this happened, and I'm stuck with Billie Eilish. It's just. So I think those kinds of things are happening, and it's really positive because if it inspires anyone to start picking up instruments again and start recreating that kind of music where it's actually not electronically created, it's created with real instruments, and
Right.
people being inspired to try and want to play that well again. I think that's a wonderful thing. I hope I live to see another generation of it.